Hello everyone, Gregg Braden here, and I want to welcome you to this session of questions and answers. We in the past have made an attempt to answer your questions individually. When people would write to us through emails or social media, I have a team, I have a staff, they work with me because we want to honor each of you directly with your question. As you can imagine, we're getting a lot of questions. We have so many questions, in fact, it's no longer practical for me to answer them personally. So what we're doing is looking at these questions, and interestingly, although each question that comes to me or to my staff, it's a unique question, the theme of the questions tend to fall into broad categories, and it's possible to answer many questions with a single answer. And I want to make those answers available to you because it tells me, when you're asking these questions, what it tells me is that the information that I'm sharing or that many of my colleagues are sharing, it's registering with you, it's meaningful to you. So you're saying, okay, if I understand this correctly, if what you've said means this, then how does that apply in my life? And that's where the questions come from. So I'm going to begin today. It's a really good question. This is from Pam in Southern California. She asked a question, Greg, you mentioned that memories are held in the field. How does that relate to all the work finding that memories are held in the body, especially traumatic memories? Well, that's a really good question. We're talking about two different kinds of memories. So I'm going to begin by talking about the body. What we now know, and a lot of the validation for what I'm going to say to you, comes through the work of a woman that I had the honor to know while she was in this world. She's now passed on. It's Dr. Candace Pert. We both had the same publisher. We toured in the 90s and I think early 2000s together. A brilliant woman. She wrote a book called Molecules of Emotion. And so much of the answer of what I'm going to share with you stems not necessarily from her perspective, but from the information that she developed, the information that she shared and discoveries she made in the medical community. So what Dr. Pert said to us very clearly is that every emotion that we have, whether it's a joyous, ecstatic emotion or a traumatic, frightening, very sad emotion, when we have those emotions, they're not just things that are happening in a void, that there are biological consequences to our experiences and the memories that come from them. Every emotion that we have creates a chemical in our body. It's called a neuropeptide. And there is a lot of new information now that is emerging about the role and the power of neuropeptides in our lives. But basically, here's how it works. When we have a feeling about an experience, we're creating the chemicals. And if it is a joyous experience, you rarely hear people going to a therapist to ask for help in reeling in their joy. You don't hear people say, man, can you help me dial down my joy? I've got too much joy in my life. And there's a reason for that. Because in the joy that we experience, those chemicals are created and they metabolize freely and move through the body. And this is what they want to do. They want to move through the body and metabolize through tears, through perspiration, through urine, through feces, body fluids, breath. We are always emitting fluids through our breath as well. So the joyous neuropeptides appear to be emitted without much of a problem. However, when we have an experience that is a frightening experience, or if we're young in life and we don't have the tools to deal with it, it can be a traumatic experience, or even older in life with no tools to deal with it. That trauma presents a series of circumstances in the body that prevent the neuropeptides from metabolizing. They can't metabolize because they're locked down. There's a constriction that comes from not being able to make sense or resolve the experience. That's why why the trauma becomes a problem. Now, and Candace talked about that in the book Molecules of Emotion. Now, further studies have gone even further, showing that it is common, not 100%, not every time, but it's common that we store these unmetabolized neuropeptides in organs and tissues and glands that we associate with the things, with the trauma, with the things that we fear, the things uh, that we have experienced that we can't resolve, that we can't reconcile. And those chemicals in the organs of the body is timeless. What the body, your body does is it says, you know what, I understand. I'm just going to paraphrase your body. Your body says, I understand you can't process right now because you don't have the tools, so I'm going to help you out. I'm going to store this unprocessed neuropeptide for you until you reach a point in your life that you can help me to process and metabolize this experience. To the body, that could be a year, that could be 60 years. The body doesn't, it's not working on the same linear time scale that we are. And that's why it's not uncommon for us to heal to the level that we're capable of, a traumatic experience. We will heal that to survive. We'll cope with it the way we need to as a child or early in life or whenever it is. It's not uncommon then later in life as we become more conscious of ourselves, our bodies, our relationship to our past, our own relationships. It's not uncommon that the body will take that opportunity as a window of opportunity to metabolize the chemicals, the neuropeptides that were stored from early in our lives. When that happens, it may surprise us. We may not be ready for that. We may not know what it is that's happening. I'm not saying it can be conscious if we're using therapy, and there's a lot of really good therapies out there. Sometimes it can sneak up on us in times that the body sees as opportune, but we may not consciously see it coming. And we've all had those experiences. One of the most common, I'll just give you an example, is in the passing of a loved one. When they pass, we're often very occupied with details and arrangements and memorials and invitations and contacting family. But you'll hear frequently that it's the 1 year anniversary that hits people the hardest. And I'm not surprised. And the reason is because in that 1 year anniversary, and sometimes you're not even looking at it on a calendar, you're just going about your day and all of a sudden, bam, it hits you. And you say, you feel tremendous sadness, for example. Or you're crying for no apparent reason or sobbing for no apparent reason. You can be sitting at a traffic light, waiting for the light to change, thinking of nothing, and that's the key. In the emptiness, the body takes this opportunity of a body memory. So this is where we're going with all this. These are body memories, are the chemicals in the body that are processing these experiences, and Pam asked specifically about trauma. So the body will take that opportunity to begin to metabolize some of those neuropeptides, and as that happens, you'll feel the feelings or experience the emotions of the experience of loss or sadness, unresolved words. I wish I'd said this. I wish I had done that. Sometimes guilt, sometimes forgiveness. I mean, it all is in the mix. So that is one kind of body memory. Now, there's another kind of body memory. As a musician, I'm very familiar with this. There's what's called muscle memory. Celloists know this, violinists know this, guitar players know this, where we teach our body to respond in a very specific way to our cues of playing an instrument or of physical exercise. If you study martial arts, you're using body memory to go through the kata, or to use with the swordsmanship, or with nunchucks if you're studying martial arts. These all rely on body memory, which is the repetition in the muscles to the point where the neurons begin to change and wire and fire in response to what you're training those muscles to do. It's another kind of body memory. So I'm making those distinctions. There is a field of energy that underlies all of existence. Scientists now accept this. It was published in the year 2012. The scientific findings through the CERN superconducting supercollider in Geneva, Switzerland, they found evidence for this field scientifically. Intuitively, you and I and many people and our indigenous ancestors always accepted that the field was there. We didn't have to prove it. But the science came to terms with the fact that this field is here. Well, now this is where it gets really interesting, because that field of energy is more than just random energy. It is a field of information. And we are in constant communication with this information, and here's the reason. Because the field isn't out there. A lot of scientists do this. They say, oh yeah, there's a field out there. It connects all things. I've seen them do this at the conferences. They'll stand up on the podium and they'll say, oh yeah, we discovered this field. There's a field out there that underlies all existence. It permeates all of creation out there. Here's what they're missing. The average human, whatever average is, we have about 50 trillion cells in our bodies. Each of those cells is composed of approximately 100 trillion atoms. And those atoms, they're not static. They're not just sitting there. They are dynamic because they are constantly emerging from the field and collapsing back into the field in this rhythm, in this dance that tells us that we are not static beings. We are dynamic beings. And this is the beauty of our existence that makes change possible, because we're not locked into a static configuration of the atoms for the condition of the health of our bodies or the tissue in our bodies or our glands or our organs. It's dynamic. When we assume a consciousness that provides a new blueprint for those atoms that are emerging, those atoms are going to conform to that blueprint. So if we like what we are, we just keep doing the same thing. If we want to change what we are, if we want to become healthy, or we want to become, awaken our systems of regeneration, rejuvenation, our immune response, we begin to assume the consciousness, and all my books and my videos talk about that, as well as Bruce Lipton, Joe Dispenza, Lynn McTaggart, Anita Moorjani, Shamini Jan. So many of our friends and colleagues talk about the different ways to change that consciousness, because we all learn differently. The point is that we can change that consciousness, and that is a different kind of memory. So in the field, not only do we have the memory that informs our body of how to present itself in the world, but we are also laying down memories in the field as we move forward through space and time. I'm creating a memory right now. What I'm saying to you right now in this present moment, a moment from now will become a memory. It is now engraved into the field of space and time, and those memories don't go away. They're in the field. Now, I think what Pam may be referring to here, one of the really interesting discoveries, and some of the neuroscientists began looking at in the late 90s and the 2000s, do we actually store memories in our brain? You know, they're dissecting memories and saying, what part of the brain contains this memory, and how, you know, where is the memory in the neuron? They couldn't find it because it's not there. What it appears to be, the mechanism appears to be that the neurons don't hold the memories. The neurons are the antenna that we form that link us to the memories that we have engraved or emblazoned into the field of space-time. Nassim Haramein talks about this beautifully and eloquently. So that our memories are in the field, what we're doing with our neurons is we're configuring our neurons to access those memories, just like you would configure a television antenna in the old days to tune in to a bandwidth for a particular station or a radio station. It's a very, very different way of thinking. David Bohm talked about this, very famous physicist. Carl Pribram did some pioneering work with this when he discovered and wrote the paper saying that the brain is holographic, memory appears to be holographic. So the implications are really interesting. What happens to some people when they begin to lose the access to their memories, when they begin to experience what we call dementia, or the different forms of dementia? Alzheimer's is one form of a dementia. There's vascular dementia, there's many different kinds of dementia. Well, what it means is that the antenna, our neurons, are losing their ability to connect with our memories in the field. Now, why does that happen? A lot of reasons, a lot of potential possibilities. There are environmental reasons. There are chemicals in the environment. Aluminum is one of those. Mercury is another one of those that are additives in many of the products that we use in our foods. These metals, cadmium, mercury, I think I just said mercury, these metals when they're in the body, they accumulate in very specific organs, including the brain. They don't metabolize, we don't wash them out with water like we do B vitamins, for example, or vitamin C. So when we're exposed to these environmentally, over time, they begin to impact the way that the neurons can communicate to access the memories. That's one possibility. There's another one that's even more interesting to me, and that is that our bodies are so intelligent that they have the ability to create a chemical. Our bodies can create the chemical within our bodies that accumulates at the synapse between the neurons, where the signal fires from one neuron to another. Our bodies can create chemicals under certain conditions that will park at the synapse, and they will absorb the spark. So that when we attempt a memory, we can attempt it, and we can send that signal through the neuron, but it'll never get to the other neuron because the chemical absorbed it. That prevents us from reaching those memories. That means we lose those memories. Now, why would we create that condition in our bodies? I'm going to give you a beautiful example of studies that have been done. And we've seen this with celebrities as well, where people have such trauma in their lives that has hurt them so deeply, all they want to do is forget. And they will declare over and over that they have forgotten the hurt. They've forgotten the suffering. They've forgotten the trauma. They will say over and over again that they don't remember. This goes very, very deep into the power of our intentions, into the power of our relationship to consciousness. If you consider what our ancestors told us, that every word we speak is a command into the field. It's a command to our bodies. It's not just an empty word. Words have power. Words have meaning. Neuroscientists have found, for example, that one word, Andrew Newberg, for example, is a neuroscientist. Andrew Newberg tells us that one word has the power to upregulate or downregulate the genes of stress in our body. One word can change us genetically. Well, that's a powerful, very powerful mechanism. So our words have power. And when we say to ourselves again and again that we want to forget the things that have hurt us, if we consider that that is a command to the body, and the body is reciprocating, the body says, I'm just going to paraphrase again, the body says, okay, you want to forget, I can arrange that for you, and the body will begin to create a chemical that matches your desire to forget. Pretty soon, the ability to access the hurtful memories no longer exists. I'm saying this, I actually witnessed this in my own mother's life. My mother passed recently from COVID, and many of you know that, and I appreciate the condolences that came with that. My mom had a difficult life for a lot of reasons, relationships, health, and I have to tell you, at the end of her life, she was a very happy woman because through her dementia, she had forgotten everything that ever hurt her. Now, I can't prove scientifically that her desire to forget is what triggered the dementia, but the studies show a strong correlation between our desire to not having the tools to resolve the trauma. Our solution is to forget them. And when we declare to our consciousness and our bodies and our mind and our brain that we are forgetting, our body, our mind, and our brain has the ability chemically to mirror the command, to answer that call to forget. And it's a very different way of looking at dementia, and it is gaining prevalence among the mental health community, because what it suggests is when we begin to lose those memories, and we recognize that, we have an option. We can either gracefully go down that path if we choose, or maybe that is our body saying, hey, you might want to look into what is the trauma that was not resolved, that you're asking yourself to forget, and resolving that trauma before you lose access to those memories. And I'm not saying it's right, wrong, good, or bad. We all learn differently. We all live differently. And my mom, when she left this world, like I said, she was a very happy woman because in her mind, she had a beautiful, perfect life, a beautiful, perfect marriage, beautiful, perfect health, and she passed gracefully and easily Nothing wrong with that. So it's a long answer to a short question, but it's a very good question, Pam. I want to thank you for asking the question. So to kind of sum this up, we're talking about different kinds of memory. We're talking about the neuropeptides that are generated from our emotions that will either metabolize or be stored in the body. That's one kind of body memory. We're talking about muscle memory that is directly linked to neural memory, the neural networks of repetition. So when I'm training with a nunchuck, or if I'm playing my guitar and doing it again and again and again and again and again and again, I'm building the neural links that allow me to have those movements, and they translate into the muscle memory. That's another kind of memory. Then we're talking about the memories in the field that we are constantly laying down. The physics of this is fascinating. Time moves forward. Now, there's nothing in physics preventing time from moving backward. However, we typically don't experience that consciously. In our dreams, we may, in our memories, we may. So as we're moving forward in space, so think about that. We're moving forward in space. Right now, you're not where you were a moment ago when I began talking about this. You cannot be, I cannot be, because our planet is moving in space. We don't always know that. We're not aware of that. But we're not at the same location where we were before in space. Space is linked to time. This is what Einstein called space-time. So as we travel this journey through space-time, our experiences are being laid down and emblazoned into the place and the moment where we had the memory in space and time that just passed. And we do this through the duration of our lives. When we have the neural networks that can always tune through resonance, through vibration to those memories, the memories, boom, 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 they're with us just like that. This is why a musician who has been a musician for 60 or 70 years of their lives can go on stage and play a song they played when they were in their 20s. They've got the muscle memory, and they've got the memory of the words and the performances that they can access. Some people will call this Akasha as well. Akasha can tie into this and may, depending on your definition, may encompass a little bit more in terms of cosmic memories as well. What this means is there are no secrets. All of our memories are stored in the field, and this goes a long way to helping us understand things like remote viewing, like telepathy, like empathy, and what that means in our lives. It all comes down to the way that we access our experiences and the different ways to access our experiences. So I hope that helps a little bit to flesh out this idea of memory and the difference between traumatic memories, muscle memories, memories held in the body. We could go on from here, but I wanted to be brief with this, and it was a good question, Pam. Thank you so much. Thank you all for tuning in today for this session of the Q&A.